everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Foxy and this is Foxy Books and Planning. Today I have a very exciting video, at least for me, which is my reading wrap up for December of 2020. We have made it and now I can start planning 2021. I do have a lot of videos planned for the next couple of weeks. Fingers crossed I will actually get them all done. But let's focus on this one first. So this was a relatively large month for me in terms of reading. I did have a lot of free time over the holiday breaks to really sit down and get through some books. And I'm kind of happy with how everything came out. I had a couple middle-of-the-road books, a couple of really great books, and some just meh books. And I made some really great progress on the in-progress list. So to get started with the books I finished this month, the first one is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I gave this book 4 stars, and I have it as a personal audiobook. So The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue follows, it's sort of a fantasy, but it's mostly a romance about a girl, Addie LaRue, who makes a deal with the devil or a demon of some sort to be free. And the devil twists that wish so that no one remembers her and she is unable to leave a mark on anything herself. But she is immortal. And with this curse, so nobody remembers her, and it's like the minute she is out of their sight, they completely forget that she ever existed. And so this book takes place it tells her story starting in the 1714 is when her story starts. And then in 2014, she stumbles across a boy, Henry Strauss, who happens to remember her. And the majority of the story, goes back and forth between her story of being cursed and the events in her life, and how she and the devil interact over the course of that, and then there's a little bit of Henry's life, and then their love story. I really enjoyed the fantasy element of this. I really liked the classic play on Faust. I found all of the characters really interesting and enjoyable, especially once you start to get to the point where Addie starts to realize how she can make herself visible by becoming an artist's muse. And I didn't mind that it was primarily romance. I wish there had been more emphasis on the fantasy elements, but this was primarily a love story. The romance was interesting and believable. For the most part, there were some sections where I was like, I don't really know. But for me, the majority of my enjoyment of this book comes from Addie's flashback story and her interactions with the devil. The ending was kind of a whimper. I kind of wanted it to go out differently, or at least have some kind of way of wrapping everything up. I won't spoil it for those of you who haven't read it, but I wanted something a little more out of that ending. But yeah, I did enjoy it. I do recommend if you liked Outlander, I would suggest this. It reminds me of Outlander, but isn't as graphic as Outlander. And is a little more succinct than Outlander. But yeah, so the next book I finished was Watchmen by Alan Moore. This is a graphic novel. I gave this 4 stars. I did really enjoy it. I enjoyed the characters. I enjoyed the interplay of the different types of media. So there are news reports, books, psychiatric evaluations sprinkled in, so there's actually like pages of reading in here, not just graphic novel. I really enjoyed all the different superheroes and showing them as not just their superhero personas, but as kind of humans with faults because a lot of times in superhero movies, they're just the superhero and they do everything perfectly, and there's never any issues. My one complaint, and the reason I ended up giving it 4 stars, was I wished the big attack on New York got more time in this book, because it basically gets like 2 or 3 pages. But I really enjoyed everything else. I'm not sure if there is a sequel. I will leave it up here if there is. If there is, I probably will look it up and look into reading it next year. But I do highly, highly recommend this for science fiction fans, superhero fans, Marvel fans, DC, whatever, just to kind of have a different, grittier look at superheroes. Alright, so next book for the month is Love in the Time of Cholera by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I did give this 3 stars. I had this from the library as an ebook. I've had it for over a year. I finally finished it. Hallelujah, I can cross this off my list. So this tells the story, and I'm going to get the 2 names. The only one I can ever remember is the woman, which is Fermina Daza. I will throw up what the man's name is, but the entire story is their love story. They meet as young adults in a town in Colombia, and they want to be together. They have a secret wedding, and then her father realizes that they are associating. He does not approve of the boy, so he sends his daughter off to finishing school and marries her off to someone else. And this, at least to me, and the story is told in a circular format. So we start with the death of Fermina Daza's husband, and then we flash back to when Fermina and the boy first meet, go all the way through their love story, and then they reconnect at the end and fall in love all over again. But this is very similar to 100 Years of Solitude in that Gabriel Garcia Marquez is really using this love story to tell the tale of that part of Colombia at that point in time, based on like the context clues and things. It's probably mid to late 19th century, maybe early 20th century, the way it's written. I will correct myself. I honestly don't remember if he ever gives it an exact setting in terms of time. But this part of the reason it took me so long is that Gabriel Garcia Marquez is much more of ambiance and detail over plot. So the very first book I ever read from him was Chronicle of a Death Foretold, which I read in high school, and I really, really loved that book. It tells the story of the death of a man due to an honor killing, and each chapter is the same day from a different perspective. So it's interesting. You're getting to see all the different sides to this story, and it really pushes the story forward. In his novels, however, because I've recently learned that is actually a novella, not a full novel, in his novels, there isn't as much framing and plot. There's much more of the, like, let me tell you the story of these people's lives. I had the same thing with 100 Years of Solitude. The only reason I got through that is because I could speed it up on my audiobook listener. Is that it's very much, let me tell you the story of Colombia through these people's eyes, essentially. And while I appreciate the writing and I appreciate the ambiance and I appreciate what was trying to be done, I really need some form of plot. And I need more plot than let me tell you these two people's love story. Because there were other things going on on the sidelines of these two people's lives. There was the husband's side. There was the boy joining a steamboat company and having all of these grand ideas and all this stuff. And I just wanted more things to drive the plot forward and get us to the eventual end goal. Alright, that being said, another romance. Apparently December was the month of romances for me. I have the novella One Fine Fae by Molly Harper. This is Mystic Bayou book 4.5, I believe. I gave this 4 stars. It's an Audible original. I've read all the other Mystic Bayou stories. I really enjoy the Mystic Bayou series. This one is a nymph. I think it's a nymph. No, it is a fae, because Wood Fae originally from Romania, who is a midwife, is contracted by the supernatural creature shadow government to go to Mystic Bayou and be the town midwife, because they're expecting a large influx of supernatural babies after after supernatural creatures have been revealed to the world at the end of the last book. And so we're introduced to this fae who is the midwife, and she is specifically spending the book helping Jillian, who was the main female character in the first book in the Mystic Bayou series, the How to Train Your Dragon boyfriend. I'll throw it up. I think I talked about it last year. She is getting ready to have a baby, and so this woman has been specifically brought in, and she ends up falling in love with one of the agent Jillian's secretary, who is not supernatural, but was cursed by another fae, or whose family was cursed by another fae many, many years ago. So he is incredibly clumsy the more stressed he gets. Very cute, very sweet, very short. I finished it in one day. Highly recommend that series if you're looking for a supernatural romance. It's better than Twilight. Then again, Twilight sets the bar really, really low. Regardless, I highly recommend the series in terms of romance, in terms of light reading. This particular series is only available as Audible original, so you have to listen to it as an audiobook. I think they're slowly releasing the books as ebooks, so you may be able to get them on Kindle, but I'm not quite certain on that. All right. So next is the first of a pair of books, Spellbreaker by Charlie Holmberg. I ended up giving this 3 stars. I do have it as a personal ebook. I had to buy it as a personal ebook because the next book is book 2 in this duology, Spellmaker by Charlie Holmberg, which I gave 4 stars and I got from NetGalley as an ebook. So part of the reason I ended up buying Spellbreaker is I've received Spellmaker from NetGalley. I had requested it on a whim. It sounded really interesting, but it wasn't prominently displayed that it was a sequel. So I went to go start reading Spellmaker and realized it was the second book in a duology, and I had not ever heard of the first book. And I looked at my library, I looked lots of places I could try and get it for free, and I could not find Spellbreaker anywhere for free, so I bought it from Kindle for a couple of dollars over Thanksgiving. These 2 books, while I did enjoy the overall story, world, magic system, the reason Spellbreaker gets 3 stars and Spellmaker gets 4 stars is these 2 books could have just been one 700-page book. And even then, it could have been edited down to make it probably more like 650. We are looking at the 2 books tell the story of Elsie Camden, who is a spellbreaker. She has the ability to undo the magic done by the spellmakers or assessors. And she has spent the majority of her childhood tasked by a mysterious organization known as the Cowls with spellbreaking tasks all over London. And Spellbreaker starts with her running in, or she ends up at a duke's estate trying to remove protections on the grounds, and she runs into a spellmaker from Barbados, Bacchus Kelsey, who is a plantation owner who has come to England to finish his mastership and obtain a master level spell. He catches her, they form a partnership. She starts helping him with some of the work around the ducal estate in exchange for him not telling anyone she's a spellbreaker, because in this particular world, magic is highly regulated. It is highly profitable, but highly regulated. And as they start working, a series of mysterious murders begin happening around London, where the assessors are being killed. And when an assessor is killed, all of the spells that they have absorbed into their bodies for their ability to use over the course of their lifetime appear in what is called an opus, or a book of all of the spells they knew. And those opuses are being stolen by the murderers. And so the story becomes kind of a murder mystery of trying to figure out who is responsible for the murders, where the opuses have gone, and why all of this is happening. That is the majority of book one. Book one is a lot of establishing the world, establishing the magic system, introducing Elsie and Bacchus to one another, and book one ends with the big reveal about who the mastermind of the plans are, or who the mastermind of the murder plot is. That should have been the halfway point of one large book. Because then book two picks up maybe a couple of days after book one with the big the book one literally ends with the revelation of, oh my god, this person's the murderer. Dun dun dun. Sound effects required. And then book two starts up with well, now we need to find them and figure out where all the missing books are. And figure out how to stop them and what they want and what their evil plan is. So then book two sees Kelsey, Bacchus, and Kelsey's employer, Ogden, and her friend Emmeline, and a couple of other kind of peripheral characters hunting down the murderer, figuring out why the murderer is doing the murders, and bringing them to justice. Book two, action-packed, really interesting. I know I've said it already, they should have been one big book. It would have allowed for a little more discussion on pacing, a little better flow. Because if that big revelation had been the middle of the book, I would have been like, okay, or even 2/3 of the way through the book. I would have appreciated, because the way that the books are split, it feels very much like the editor was looking at the books, went, this would make a good stopping point, a twist ending, and it'll definitely make people come up and buy book two. And everyone went, brilliant. But I did enjoy the second book better just because it was more action-packed. There was less world building. But we still allowed our characters to grow and finish their arcs from book one. There weren't a whole lot more characters to introduce into this one. My only major complaint with this one is I feel like some of the events of the story are out of order. And I can't really talk about them without spoiling the plot of book two. But there is a major event that happens with about 20% of the book left that, at least to me, feels like it should have been the last chapter of the book, or the second to last chapter. We've wrapped everything up. Our villain is caught and been brought to justice. And now we can have our ending and have our big wrap up where everybody says goodbye and goes their separate ways, etc., etc. But that's not what happens. That event happens earlier. So that big event happens. Everyone should be going on their merry ways, but we still have a murderer to hunt down. So now we're running around the countryside hunting down a murderer. Murder is brought to justice, and then we get the following actions. Overall, good YA duology. Did it need to be a duology? Absolutely not. It could have been a standalone. Could some of the details have been ironed out a little bit more to make it flow better and to make it an overall better plot? Definitely. Did I still enjoy it? Yes. If you're looking for a weird, interesting magic system, definitely try it. If you're looking for something to replace Harry Potter in your life, maybe for a light staycation read, definitely do it that way. But with that, I will move on to my next book. So the next book I finished is The Grand Hotel by Scott Kenmore. I gave this 4 stars. It is a personal audiobook. The Grand Hotel is a collection of short stories that are strung together with a connecting narrative. It's all ghost stories, and the general idea is that a group of tourists has wandered into the Grand Hotel, and the night manager offers to give them a tour of the place, along with visiting the most distinguished permanent residents. So each thing, or each story, is one of the hotel guests telling their story. The way I described it on my Goodreads review is a macabre Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. It really feels like that, especially once you get to a certain point in the story. Visitors start dropping off because they want to stay behind and check or continue talking to one of the residents, to the point, and then at the very end, it's the night manager and a little girl, or not a little girl. There's one guest and the hotel manager left at the end, kind of summarizing the lessons to be learned from the book. I really, really enjoyed this. The first couple of stories weren't that great. But once you get to like the chef, the violinist, the chef is definitely my favorite story. The violinist is weird, but still interesting. And then King Vikram, which is the last story, was also really, really good. I had originally intended to read it in October, which would have been better. But I still did enjoy it, and it made my road trip to visit my parents much more enjoyable. So I would really recommend this if you are looking for horror reads or short stories instead of maybe a full novel. Sorry. But either way, I really, really enjoyed this book. All right. Next is Questland by Carrie Vaughn. I gave this book 5 stars. I had it from NetGalley as an ebook. So Questland tells the story of Addie Cox, who is a professor of literature, who is drafted by an eccentric billionaire to be part of a strike team to go and reclaim his pet project, which is an island off the coast of Washington, where he has been trying to build a fantasy land, not unlike Jurassic Park, with the eventual goal of making technology so advanced that it is indistinguishable from magic. However, there has been a mutiny on the island, and the island has had a protective shield around it for about 6 months. And a boat from the Coast Guard has sunk and all hands lost. So now there's major liability, there's been deaths, so the billionaire brings together a team of mercenaries and Dr. Cox to go in and rescue everybody and figure out what's going on. The Dust Jacket put this as Ready Player One meets fantasy. Like, it's Ready Player, it is chock full of fantasy references. If you are a fantasy nerd, you will not be disappointed. The way I describe this is fantasy Jurassic Park. And if you want to be very, very specific, this is Jurassic Park 3 if it was fantasy. I really enjoyed the story. I really enjoyed all of the characters. I enjoy the arc that Addie Cox. 2 Addies this month. I enjoyed Dr. Cox's character arc. I enjoyed the mercenaries. I enjoyed the fantasy world. I believe this book comes out next June. I highly recommend you guys pick this one up and at least try it, especially if you liked Ready Player One and you're more of a fantasy person, or you just want to read kind of a fun pop culture-y fantasy novel. My only complaint with the book was that it did feel rushed in parts, especially towards the end. Like, it really needed an extra 10 or 20 pages to really breathe and finish the plot up. And the way the book ended, there might possibly be a sequel, so I will cross my fingers and hope and pray that there will be a sequel, because I really, really, really did enjoy this one. All right, and then the last book I finished this month is Girl Serpent Thorn by Melissa Bachardeur. Apologies if I butchered that. I gave it 4 stars. I had this from the library as an audiobook. So this is a take on a combination of Persian history, Persian folklore, European fairy tales, and some modern Persian influences, where we are following Soraya, who is a princess who has been cursed to be poisonous to anyone who touches her. The story begins with her mother coming to her chambers, where she's kind of been hidden away from view, to let her know that her brother, the Shah, is going to be marrying her childhood best friend. And in the lead up, and that there is a div or a demon in the dungeons. And so in the run up to her brother's wedding, Soraya is trying to figure out how her curse came to be and how she can possibly end the curse. And everything just kind of goes awry in the most YA possible elements. I did enjoy it. It was an enjoyable story. It did have a kind of brisk pacing that I do enjoy. There was a lot of like, and now we're here and we're doing this, and now we're here and we're doing this, and now we're here and we're doing this. I did appreciate that. I did find the ending rushed. When is a YA ending not rushed at this point? I think it's like a hallmark of YAs that the endings are always rushed. And my other big thing, and this may be an unpopular opinion, but there is an LGBTQ plus romance between Soraya and another female character in this book. And personally, I don't think it really adds anything to the story. If anything, it just distracts from what's going on. And it's very much a woman empowerment story where it's Soraya coming to understand her power and her will and her wants and needs. And I just kind of wanted that without any romance elements. I didn't need romance. I just wanted Soraya to be a badass the whole book. There are some elements where she wishy-washies, where she's like, she goes from one scene where she's not kicking ass and taking names, but doing things and doing them in a manner where she's like, I'm a princess, I can do this, let's do this, to simpering in the corner like a golden age Disney princess waiting for her prince to come save her. And she goes back and forth, and that irritated me. I'm just like, you're either a Disney princess who's helpless, or you need to be a badass bitch. Excuse the language, but it is the truth, in my opinion. And I just wanted her to be one or the other, and if she was going to be one, then fine. If she was going to be the other, then fine, but just stick to one. But it is a pretty good YA fantasy. If you're interested, check it out. And with that, a whole 30 minutes later, we will move on to currently reading. This one should be very quick because I did do a good job of clearing out my reading list this month. I did add 2 new books to the list, which are In a Holidays by Christina Lauren. I have this from the library as an ebook. This is Groundhog Day at Christmas Time with romance. I'm 20% of the way through and nothing has really happened yet. She's gotten to the Groundhog Day loop, but she doesn't quite understand it yet. I will have more about that in January. And then my other one is Range, Why Generalists Triumph in a Specialized World by David Epstein. I have this as a library audiobook. I am 22% of the way through that. It is a nonfiction book where David Epstein's main thesis is that in the modern world, we are so specialized that it is detrimental to our careers and our ability to think critically. And the best thing that we can do as a society is allow ourselves to be more generalized and be able to have more range and ability to learn new things and new skills. I'm kind of wishy-washy on it right now. I understand where his thesis is coming from. I understand the evidence he's putting forward, but at the same time, I feel like it could have been a nice journal article as opposed to a full book. But I will hold my final opinions until next month. And then next I'm going to, I have one book that I've made progress on, which is The Camelot Betrayal by Kirsten White. I made exactly 3% progress this month, which is kind of shocking to me. I did love The Guinevere Betrayal. I finished that in like a day and a half. This one did not catch me as well, or did not hook me as quickly as Guinevere Deception did, and it's kind of a slog at the moment. Hopefully I will be able to finish it soon and tell you my thoughts, but I'm kind of bummed that I don't love it as much as I hoped I would. And then my next 3 books I have made no progress on in December, but when you have a bunch of other books you're working on, it kind of makes sense that something's gotta fall to the wayside. So Columbus Day, Expeditionary Force Book 1 by Craig Allenson. I haven't made any progress this month. And then Childhood's End by Arthur C. Clarke, which I have as a library ebook. And Lord Fowl's Bane by Stephen R. Donaldson, which is a personal ebook. Hopefully I'll make progress on those in the near future. I do not have any books on deck for the month of January, just because I do have some reading goals and plans that I'm going to talk about in another video that I'm hoping, praying I will get scripted and done next week. And then I will be back at the end of January with my reading wrap up and my touch in on how my progress is going on my goals. With that, please do remember to like and subscribe. Comment down below if you agree or disagree with any of my takes, or if you have any books you think I should or shouldn't read based on what I've been reading and what my kind of thoughts are on the things I'm reading. But regardless, I will see you all in another video, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye!